Sarah Martinez had perfected the art of invisibility. For 3 years, she'd blended seamlessly into the beige hallways of Lincoln Elementary School in suburban Denver, Colorado. Her students knew her as the soft-spoken third-grade teacher who brought homemade cookies on Fridays and never raised her voice, even when Tommy Henderson launched paper airplanes across the classroom for the 5th time in one morning. The October afternoon started like any other. Sarah was helping 8-year-old Emma Chen with her math homework during after-school tutoring when the fire alarm pierced the air. Not the scheduled drill they'd practiced last week. This was different. The sharp, urgent blast that made Sarah's muscles tense in a way her colleagues couldn't understand. "Line up, everyone," she said calmly, though her eyes were already scanning the windows, calculating exit routes, measuring distances. Old habits died hard. As they filed toward the emergency exit, Sarah noticed the black smoke seeping under the door of the maintenance room. Real fire. Her training kicked in before conscious thought could interfere. "Stop!" she commanded, her voice carrying an authority that made 23rd graders freeze instantly. "We're going out the back." "But Mrs. Martinez, we're supposed to," began Jessica, the class rule follower. "Trust me." Sarah was already moving, herding the children away from the smoke with movements too precise, too practiced for an elementary school teacher. She grabbed the fire extinguisher from the wall, checked the pressure gauge in one fluid motion, and positioned herself between the children and the potential danger. The maintenance door burst open, flames licked at the wooden frame, and the acrid smell of burning chemicals filled the air. Someone had been careless with the cleaning supplies again, or maybe it wasn't an accident. Sarah's mind catalogued the situation in milliseconds. 17 children under her care, 2 exit routes potentially compromised, smoke beginning to thicken. She pulled out her cell phone and speed-dialed 911, but her other hand was doing something that would have surprised anyone watching closely, checking her pulse points, assessing her body's readiness for action. This is Sarah Martinez at Lincoln Elementary. We have a structure fire in the East Wing maintenance room with potential chemical accelerant. I have 17 children evacuating through the south exit. ETA on fire response?" Her voice was steady, professional, using terminology that made the dispatcher pause. "Ma'am, are you emergency personnel?" "Negative. Just get them here fast." The children followed her without question as she led them through the south corridor, past the library, toward the playground exit. But as they rounded the corner, Sarah saw something that made her blood run cold. A man in dark clothing was tampering with the exit door, and when he looked up, she caught the glint of metal in his hand. "Everyone stop and sit down right here," she whispered, her voice carrying an edge that made the children obey instantly. "Count to 60. Then walk, don't run, to Mrs. Patterson's room and lock the door." "Mrs. Martinez, where are you going?" Emma whispered. Sarah was already moving, staying low, using the lockers for cover. Her body moved with a fluid precision that would have shocked her principal, who'd always praised her gentle demeanor during parent conferences. This wasn't the Sarah Martinez who baked birthday cakes for the teachers' lounge or volunteered for the school book fair. The man at the exit door had a gun. Sarah could see it clearly now, could read the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept checking his watch. This wasn't random. Someone wanted Lincoln Elementary to burn, and they wanted to make sure no one got out. She reached him in 12 seconds flat, moving through his blind spots with the kind of tactical awareness that took years to develop. Her first strike disabled the weapon hand. Her second sent him to his knees. He was unconscious before he could cry out. Sarah zip-tied his hands with the emergency restraints she kept in her teacher bag, another habit that would have raised questions if anyone had bothered to look. She secured his weapon and checked his pockets, finding a radio, a timer device, and a photo that made her heart stop. It was her own face, but from 15 years ago. Younger, harder, wearing the desert camouflage of her former life. Below the photo, someone had written in red ink, "Sarah Ghost Martinez, SEAL Team 6, KIA Afghanistan, 2009. Except she wasn't dead. She'd just gotten very, very good at pretending to be. The fire department arrived as she was leading the children to safety, and by the time the police finished securing the scene, Sarah had slipped back into her teacher persona. Just another concerned educator who'd helped evacuate her students during an emergency. But as she stood in the parking lot watching the flames being extinguished, she caught her reflection in a car window. For just a moment, she saw not Sarah Martinez, third-grade teacher, but Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, United States Navy SEALs, the woman who died in a classified operation that officially never happened. Principal Williams approached her, clipboard in hand. "Sarah, I can't thank you enough. The way you handled the evacuation, it's like you had training or something." She managed a tired smile. "Just did what felt right." As the crowd dispersed and the immediate danger passed, Sarah rolled up her sleeve to check her watch. The movement revealed just an inch of skin at her wrist and the unmistakable edge of a tattoo that no elementary school teacher should possess. The trident, the SEAL insignia, the mark of America's most elite warriors. A paramedic who was checking her vitals caught sight of it. His eyes widened in recognition. "Ma'am, is that—" Sarah pulled her sleeve down quickly. "Just an old tattoo, nothing important." But as she walked to her car, she could feel eyes on her back. The paramedic was talking to a police detective, gesturing toward her retreating form. In the crowd of parents and emergency responders, other people were starting to notice things too, the way she'd moved during the crisis. The terminology she'd used on the phone, the fact that she'd somehow single-handedly disabled an armed intruder while keeping 17 children safe. Sarah Martinez, mild-mannered elementary school teacher, was about to have her carefully constructed life examined very closely. And given the photo in the unconscious intruder's pocket, someone already knew exactly who she really was. The ghost was about to be resurrected, whether she wanted it or not. Detective Ray Coleman had seen enough in his 23 years with Denver PD to know when something didn't add up. The unconscious intruder at Lincoln Elementary was just the first puzzle piece that didn't fit. The man's name was Victor Petrov, and according to his fingerprints, he'd been dead for 2 years, killed in a prison riot in Moscow. Yet here he was, very much alive, with Sarah Martinez's old military photo in his pocket. Coleman sat across from Sarah in the school's conference room at 9 p.m., the building empty except for custodial staff and the lingering smell of smoke. She looked like exactly what she claimed to be, a tired teacher in a cardigan and sensible flats, her dark hair pulled back in the kind of practical ponytail favored by women who spent their days chasing 8-year-olds. But Coleman had been a detective long enough to notice details. The way she sat with perfect posture, never turning her back to the door, how her eyes tracked every movement in her peripheral vision. The fact that her hands, despite being folded calmly in her lap, showed calluses in places that suggested serious weapons training. "So, Miss Martinez," Coleman began, consulting his notes, "you've been teaching at Lincoln for 3 years. Before that, I taught at Mountain View Elementary in Littleton." Her voice was steady, practiced. "And before teaching? College, University of Colorado, education major?" Coleman nodded, as if her answers satisfied him. They both knew he was just getting started. "The paramedic mentioned he saw a tattoo on your wrist. Military significance, he thought." Sarah's expression didn't change. "I dated a Marine in college. Young and stupid, you know how it is." "Right." Coleman leaned back in his chair. "The thing is, Miss Martinez, I've been doing this job for a long time. I've seen how regular people react to crisis situations. They panic, they freeze, they make mistakes." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "You didn't do any of those things. I just tried to keep my students safe. You neutralized an armed intruder in under 15 seconds. You used tactical terminology on your 911 call. You carried zip-tie restraints in your teacher bag." Coleman pulled out an evidence bag containing the photo from Petrov's pocket. "And this man had a picture of you in military uniform, dated 15 years ago." Sarah looked at the photo for a long moment. When she met Coleman's eyes again, something had shifted. The mask was still in place, but there were cracks around the edges. "I don't know what you want me to say, Detective. I want you to tell me who you really are, because Sarah Martinez, elementary school teacher, doesn't exist before 6 years ago. I know." I checked. The silence stretched between them. Outside, Coleman could hear the distant hum of traffic on I-25, the normal sounds of a city settling into evening. Inside this room, two people sat across from each other, each waiting for the other to blink first. Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and Coleman saw her face go pale. "I need to take this." "No. Whatever it is can wait." She looked at him with eyes that had gone from mild brown to something altogether more dangerous. "Detective, I'm not under arrest. You can't hold me here." "Actually, I can. 24 hours for questioning related to an ongoing investigation." Sarah's phone buzzed again. This time she answered it before Coleman could stop her. "Yes?" Coleman couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but he watched Sarah's expression change from concern to something approaching fear. Real fear, not the manufactured kind. "How many?" she asked quietly. More conversation he couldn't hear. "Understood." 12 hours. She ended the call and looked at Coleman with an expression he'd never seen on a school teacher's face. It was the look of a soldier receiving orders she didn't want to follow. "Detective, I need you to listen to me very carefully. In approximately 4 hours, people are going to come looking for me. These are not people you want to meet. They're not people Lincoln Elementary's insurance policy covers. If you're smart, you'll let me walk out of here right now." Coleman felt a chill run down his spine. "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning. Victor Petrov wasn't here by accident. He was reconnaissance. The real team is coming tonight." "Team for what?" Sarah stood up, and Coleman was surprised by how naturally she moved to a position that gave her tactical advantage over the room's entrances. This wasn't the behavior of someone pretending to be military trained. This was muscle memory. "My name is Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, United States Navy SEALs. Serial number 6337291. My last mission was classified Operation Neptune's Thunder, Afghanistan, 2009. Officially, I died in that operation. Unofficially, I've been in witness protection for 15 years under the Tactical Identity Protection Program." Coleman blinked. "Witness protection for what?" "My team discovered something we weren't supposed to see. Arms deals. Weapons flowing to terrorists from sources inside our own government. We tried to report it through proper channels." Sarah's voice was steady, but Coleman could hear the old pain underneath. "Instead, they tried to make us disappear permanently. I was the only one who made it out. And now? Now someone's figured out where I am. Victor Petrov worked for the same arms dealers my team tried to expose, the ones who had us killed." Coleman's radio crackled. "All units, we have reports of suspicious activity near Lincoln Elementary. Multiple vehicles, unknown occupants." Sarah moved to the window and peered through the blinds. 3 black SUVs, professional spacing. "They're not here to talk." "How do you know?" She turned to face him, and Coleman saw that the mild-mannered teacher was completely gone now. In her place stood someone who looked like she could take apart the entire Denver PD without breaking a sweat. "Because that's how I would do it." The lights in the parking lot suddenly went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the school in an eerie red glow. Coleman's radio exploded with chatter. Officers reporting that they were being jammed, that their communications were down, that armed figures were moving through the school grounds. "Detective," Sarah said quietly, "if you want to live through the next hour, you're going to have to trust me. And you're going to have to forget everything you think you know about how school teachers are supposed to behave." Outside, Coleman could hear the distinctive sound of tactical boots on concrete, professional, coordinated, closing in. Sarah Martinez, whoever she really was about to go to war in an elementary school in suburban Denver. The first breach came through the east entrance, the same door Victor Petrov had been sabotaging earlier. Sarah heard the distinctive pop of a door charge, followed by the whispered coordination of a professional tactical team. She counted at least 6 voices in the hallway, moving with military precision. Detective Coleman was reaching for his radio when Sarah grabbed his wrist. "Don't! They're monitoring all frequencies. The moment you transmit, they'll triangulate our position. This is insane. I'm calling for backup. Your backup is 20 minutes out, and these people will be done in 5. Sarah moved to the supply closet and began pulling out items Coleman didn't even know were there. Tactical flashlights, zip ties, and what looked like a combat knife taped under a shelf. "How well do you know this building's layout?" "Pretty well, but air ducts?" "There's a maintenance crawl space that runs between floors." "Perfect." Sarah was transforming before his eyes. Gone was the careful posture of someone trying to appear harmless. Her movements were economical, predatory, purposeful. She checked the combat knife's edge with professional efficiency. "Who are you, really?" Coleman whispered. "Someone who's been playing dead for 15 years, hoping never to have to do this again." She handed him a flashlight. "Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say when I say it. If I tell you to run, you run. If I tell you to hide, you disappear. These people don't take prisoners." The conference room door exploded inward. Sarah was moving before the smoke cleared, rolling across the floor and coming up behind the overturned table they'd been using. 2 figures in tactical gear swept into the room, weapons raised, scanning with practiced efficiency. Clear right, clear left, no targets. They were good. Sarah could tell from their movement, their communication, their spacing. Military contractors, probably former special forces, but they were hunting a ghost, and ghosts had advantages. She waited until they were both fully in the room, committed to their positions, before striking. The knife took the first man in the back of the knee, severing tendons and dropping him silently. The second turned at his partner's fall, but Sarah was already there, her hand clamping over his mouth while the blade found the gap between his body armor plates. 2 down. 4 to go minimum. Coleman stared in shock at the bodies. "Jesus Christ, I just saved our lives." Sarah was already stripping weapons and ammunition from the fallen men. "These are military-grade assault rifles, body armor, night vision. They came here to kill everyone who might have seen my face today, including you." "Why?" "Because 15 years ago my team discovered that someone high up in the Pentagon was selling weapons to terrorist cells in Afghanistan. Not just small arms, heavy weapons, anti-aircraft missiles, the kind that could bring down civilian airliners." Sarah checked the rifle's action, her movements showing years of familiarity with the weapon. "When we tried to report it, our entire unit got marked for termination." Coleman's radio crackled with static, then cleared. "All units, Lincoln Elementary is dark. SWAT is 10 minutes out. Too long," Sarah muttered. She moved to the window and observed the parking lot through the blinds. 3 more at the perimeter. They're setting up a kill box, standard containment protocol. "How do you know all this?" "Because I wrote half the tactical manuals they're probably using." Sarah turned from the window. "The air duct access?" "Main office, behind the principal's desk." They moved through the darkened hallways like ghosts themselves. Sarah navigated by memory and instinct, avoiding the emergency lighting that would silhouette them for watching snipers. Coleman struggled to keep up with her fluid, silent movement through the familiar corridors. A voice echoed from the east wing. "Tango 1 and 2 are down. Repeat, we have casualties." "Copy. All units converge on the main office. Target is armed and dangerous." Sarah smiled grimly. "They're adapting faster than I hoped. Professional team, probably former Delta or Rangers." "How can you tell?" "Because they're not panicking. Lesser operators would be calling for immediate extraction after losing 2 men to a schoolteacher." They reached the main office without incident. Sarah quickly located the air duct access, while Coleman kept watch at the door. The opening was tight, but both of them could fit. "Where does this lead?" Sarah asked as they climbed inside. "Runs between floors. You can access any room in the building from up here, or exit through the roof maintenance hatch." "Perfect. We're going to the roof." They crawled through darkness, following Coleman's whispered directions. Behind them, Sarah could hear the tactical team systematically clearing the building room by room. They had maybe 10 minutes before the searchers reached their current position. "Martinez!" a voice called out through the building's PA system. "Sarah Martinez! We know you're here. We know who you are." Sarah froze in the ductwork. That voice was familiar. "My name is Colonel James Harrison, U.S. Army Special Operations Command. You may remember me from Afghanistan." Coleman felt Sarah's entire body tense beside him in the cramped space. "You know him. He was my commanding officer," Sarah whispered. "The one who ordered the hit on my team." "Sarah, you've caused us considerable trouble over the years, but it's time to come home. And this charade, your country needs you." "Bullshit," Sarah breathed. "He's not here to recruit me. He's here to finish what he started 15 years ago." They reached the roof access. Sarah pushed through the hatch and pulled Coleman up after her. The October night was cold, with a bitter wind cutting across the flat roof of the elementary school. Denver's lights sparkled below them, normal and peaceful, while on the roof, two people crouched in the darkness, surrounded by killers. Sarah moved to the roof's edge and peered down at the parking lot. "SWAT's here." Coleman could see the armored vehicles, the tactical officers deploying into positions, but he could also see Harrison's team repositioning, and he realized with growing horror that they weren't planning to retreat. "They're going to kill the SWAT team too," he said. "Anyone who might have seen evidence of my survival, yes." Sarah checked her weapon, counted her ammunition. "Coleman, I need you to get off this roof. There's a fire ladder on the west side. Get down, get to the SWAT commander, tell him what's happening." "What about you?" Sarah looked at him with eyes that had seen too much war, made too many impossible choices. "I'm going to do what I should have done 15 years ago." "Which is? Stop running!" The rooftop access hatch exploded upward in a shower of metal and concrete. Armed figures in tactical gear poured through the opening, and Sarah Martinez, former SEAL, former Ghost, now very much alive and very much angry, stepped out of the shadows to meet them. Sarah moved like death itself across the rooftop. The first operative through the hatch never saw her coming. She struck from behind cover, her combat knife sliding between body armor plates with surgical precision. He dropped silently, his weapon clattering across the gravel roof. Two more followed, scanning with night vision goggles that turned the darkness into green-tinted clarity. But Sarah had already moved, using the rooftop's ventilation units and HVAC equipment for concealment. These weren't the cramped corridors of the school building. This was open terrain where her SEAL training gave her every advantage. "Tango down," one of them whispered into his radio. "Contact on the roof." Sarah smiled grimly. Now they knew where she was, but they also knew what they were facing. The element of surprise was gone, but so was her need to hide. She disabled the second operative with a precision strike to the carotid artery, dropping him into unconsciousness before he could raise an alarm. The third managed to get his weapon up, but Sarah was already rolling, coming up behind him with her liberated assault rifle. "Don't," she said quietly. He spun anyway. The rifle barked once, and Coleman winced at the sound echoing across the quiet suburban neighborhood. Below, SWAT officers shouted orders, repositioning in response to gunfire from above. Sarah moved to the roof's edge and peered down. Harrison's remaining team was caught between her elevated position and the SWAT perimeter. They'd expected to be hunting a schoolteacher, not fighting a one-woman war against someone who'd spent years perfecting the art of killing in impossible circumstances. "Sarah," Harrison's voice carried across the parking lot, amplified by a bullhorn. "Let's talk. You're outnumbered and outgunned. This doesn't have to end badly for everyone." She keyed the radio she'd taken from one of the fallen operatives. "Hello, Colonel. It's been a long time. 15 years. You've been busy. I've been surviving. Something my team didn't get the chance to do after you sold them out. They were collateral damage in a larger operation. You know how these things work, Sarah. Sometimes soldiers die so that others can live." Sarah felt the familiar rage building in her chest, the same anger that had sustained her through 3 years of running, 6 years of hiding, and now 15 years of pretending to be someone else. What was the larger operation, James? Selling Stinger missiles to Taliban cells? Arming the same people who were killing American soldiers? We were building assets. Deep cover operations you weren't cleared to understand. I understood enough. Sarah moved along the roof's perimeter, using her elevated position to track the remaining hostiles below. I understood that American weapons were being used to shoot down American helicopters. I understood that my brothers were dying because someone in the Pentagon thought profit was more important than their lives. Below, she could see SWAT officers trying to establish communication with their command structure. But Harrison's people had sophisticated jamming equipment, and the tactical frequency was still compromised. Sarah, you need to understand the situation you're in. My authorization comes from the highest levels. This is a matter of national security. Your authorization comes from war profiteers who got rich selling weapons to terrorists. Sarah spotted movement near the school's east entrance. How many American soldiers died because of those missiles, James? How many? That's classified. Everything's classified with you. Sarah lined up her shot. Even murder. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. 200 yards away, one of Harrison's snipers crumpled behind his cover. The other operatives immediately began tactical movement, trying to reach positions where Sarah couldn't engage them from the roof. But she was already moving, rappelling down the fire escape using rope improvised from the building's emergency equipment. Coleman watched in amazement as she descended the 3-story building with the fluid grace of someone who'd done tactical insertions from much greater heights. Sarah hit the ground running, using the SWAT vehicles for cover as she maneuvered toward Harrison's position. The remaining operatives were good, but they were fighting someone who knew all their tactics because she'd helped develop them. She flanked left, using the knowledge of the school's layout that 3 years of teaching had given her. The portable classrooms, the maintenance shed, the playground equipment, all became tactical advantages in her mental map. Ghost, actual, this is Bravo 2, a voice crackled over the radio. We need immediate extraction. Repeat, immediate extraction. Negative, came Harrison's voice. Mission completion is priority 1. Target must be neutralized. Sarah heard the exchange and felt something cold settle in her stomach. Harrison wasn't just here to kill her. He was here to kill everyone who might connect him to the arms-dealing operation. The SWAT officers, Detective Coleman, anyone who'd witnessed tonight's events. She keyed her radio. All SWAT units, this is Martinez. Harrison's team has orders to eliminate all witnesses. They're not planning to let you live. Static answered her. SWAT command, do you copy? Harrison's people have killed federal witnesses before. You're all targets. Finally, a voice responded. This is SWAT Commander Morrison. Who is this? Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, U.S. Navy SEALs. The people you're facing are rogue military contractors. They have no intention of allowing survivors. Martinez, are you the teacher who... I'm the target they came here to kill, along with everyone else who might have seen their faces. Sarah reached the gymnasium's rear entrance and slipped inside. The building's layout was burned into her memory now. Every classroom, every corridor, every potential ambush point or defensive position. She could hear Harrison's remaining operatives conducting a final sweep, trying to locate her for one decisive engagement. There were still at least 3 of them active, plus Harrison himself. 4 trained killers against one woman who'd been pretending to be dead for 15 years. But pretending to be dead and actually being dead were 2 very different things. Sarah Martinez had spent 3 years perfecting the art of invisibility in an elementary school. Tonight, she was going to show Harrison's people exactly how invisible a ghost could be when she decided to become visible again. The gymnasium's emergency lighting cast everything in deep red shadows, perfect hunting conditions for someone who'd learned to kill in the darkness of Afghan mountain caves. Sarah checked her weapons ammunition, inventoried her remaining equipment, and prepared for the final confrontation with the man who destroyed her life 15 years ago. Outside, she could hear Harrison calling orders to his remaining team. They were moving toward the gymnasium, converging on her position with professional precision. Good. She was tired of running. Sarah Martinez stood in the center of Lincoln Elementary's gymnasium, surrounded by the ghosts of her former life. Every shadow reminded her of teammates who'd died trusting orders from a commanding officer who'd sold them out for money. Every echo brought back memories of missions that had turned into massacres because someone in the Pentagon had armed both sides of the conflict. But tonight, the ghosts were on her side. She disabled the gymnasium's main lighting and positioned herself where the emergency exit signs created overlapping fields of fire. 3 entrances to cover, 4 hostiles remaining, and enough ammunition to make them count their shots. Harrison's voice carried through the building's PA system. "Sarah, you're trapped. My men have the building surrounded. The SWAT officers outside think they're helping, but they don't understand the situation. This can end easy or hard. Your choice." She keyed her radio response. "James, do you remember Sergeant Mike Torres?" Silence. "He was my spotter in Kandahar. Took shrapnel from one of your missiles. A stinger we'd watched you sell to the Taliban 2 weeks earlier. He bled out calling for his mom while I tried to stuff his intestines back into his body." "Sarah, do you remember Lieutenant Jessica Kim, sniper, best shot in the unit? She lasted 3 hours after the IED hit our convoy. 3 hours of agony because the explosive was American-made, sold through your network to the same people we were hunting." The gymnasium's east door opened silently. Sarah tracked the movement through her peripheral vision but didn't react. Let them think they had the element of surprise. "Sarah, you need to understand." "I understand perfectly." Her voice was calm now, steady with the kind of purpose she hadn't felt in 15 years. "You sold weapons to terrorists. My team found out. You had us killed. I survived. Now you want to finish the job." 2 more doors. They were conducting a coordinated breach, professional and thorough. But Sarah had spent 3 years learning every acoustic property of this room, every sightline, every tactical advantage. "Final offer, Sarah. Surrender now, and I'll make sure your death is quick. Counter-offer, James." The tactical team moved into the gymnasium with practiced precision, night vision goggles turning the darkness into green-tinted clarity. They expected to find a desperate schoolteacher hiding behind gym equipment. Instead, they found a ghost who'd been waiting 15 years for this moment. Sarah's first shot came from an impossible angle, ricocheting off the basketball backboard to catch the lead operative in an unarmored gap below his helmet. He dropped instantly, his weapon clattering across the polished floor. The second shot took down the sniper who'd been setting up a high position in the bleachers. Sarah had anticipated his movement, calculated his likely vantage point, and pre-sighted the shot before they'd even entered the building. 2 down, 2 to go. "Jesus Christ," she heard someone whisper into their radio. "She's not human." "She's very human," Sarah called out, her voice echoing strangely in the large space. "Just better trained than you expected." The remaining operatives had taken cover behind the gym equipment, but Sarah knew every blind spot in this room. She'd supervised children playing hide-and-seek here countless times, learning the angles and shadows that 3 years of teaching had burned into her tactical awareness. She moved like water, flowing from position to position with the kind of fluid grace that came from years of combat operations in hostile territory. The third operative never saw her coming, just felt the knife slide between his ribs with surgical precision. That left Harrison. "You always were the best of us," his voice called from somewhere in the darkness. "Kandahar, Fallujah, that operation in Syria we're not supposed to talk about. You were the perfect weapon. I was never a weapon." Sarah's voice was steady, calm, final. "I was a soldier. There's a difference." "Is there? You've killed 6 of my men tonight. Your men came here to murder children's teachers and police officers. I stopped them. Same result, same methods. Same Sarah Martinez, who could clear an entire building without breaking a sweat." Sarah moved toward Harrison's voice, using the acoustic properties of the gymnasium to triangulate his position. He was near the equipment storage room, probably using the doorway for cover and concealment. "You know what the difference is, James? Enlighten me." "When I killed enemy combatants, I went home and threw up, every time. For 15 years. Sarah was close enough now to see Harrison's muzzle flash when he fired. You went home and counted money. Harrison's shots went wide. Sarah's didn't. He dropped behind the equipment storage counter, clutching his shoulder. Sarah, wait! 15 years, James. 15 years of hiding, teaching children, pretending to be someone else because you couldn't let the truth come out. She moved around the counter, weapon trained on the man who'd destroyed her life. How much money was it worth? How much did you get for selling American soldiers to the highest bidder? Harrison looked up at her, blood seeping through his tactical vest. You don't understand the complexities. I understand that my friends are dead because of you. Outside, Sarah could hear SWAT officers breaching the school's entrances, finally moving into the building now that the jamming equipment was down. Detective Coleman would be with them, probably trying to explain the impossible situation he'd witnessed tonight. Sarah, Harrison whispered, if you kill me, you'll never get the full story. There are others involved, higher up the chain of command than you can imagine. She looked at him for a long moment, seeing not the commanding officer she'd once respected, but a war profiteer who'd built his fortune on American blood. Oh, James, she said quietly, I've been dead for 15 years. I think I can handle a few more ghosts. The final shot echoed through Lincoln Elementary's gymnasium. When SWAT found her 20 minutes later, Sarah Martinez was sitting calmly beside Harrison's body, her weapon disassembled and her hands visible. Detective Coleman approached slowly, his own weapon lowered. Sarah? She looked up at him with eyes that held 15 years of accumulated pain, loss, and finally, justice. It's over. Who were they, really? War profiteers, arms dealers, the kind of people who get rich while soldiers die. Sarah stood slowly, allowing the SWAT officers to secure the scene. The kind of people who needed me to stay dead. And now? Sarah Martinez looked around the gymnasium where she'd supervised countless school assemblies, parent nights, and children's basketball games. For 3 years, this had been her world. Small, safe, predictable. Now it was a war zone, and she was a soldier again. Now I guess we find out if ghosts can learn to live again. As the SWAT team led her outside, past the bodies of Harrison's operatives and into the flashing lights of emergency vehicles, Sarah caught sight of her reflection in the school's windows. For the first time in 15 years, she looked like exactly who she was supposed to be. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, United States Navy SEALs, was officially alive again.